Professor Grabiner sulked underneath the awning of a nearby building, trying to figure out the best route to get to his classroom with minimal interruption. Students were milling about the crowded quad, shouting and yelling, doing anything they could to attract attention to themselves and their ridiculous campaigns. Without conscious awareness of his thoughts, he found his eyes searching for that freshman girl who had insisted to work with him instead of the older Danson sibling. It was interesting, to be sure, that she would choose his company over one of the most popular boys in school, but then again, she had already proven herself to be quite foolish to try to attempt full-body teleportation in her first exam. The more he thought about it, the more he had decided that it had just been a fluke. Beginner's luck. He wanted to spend more time with her to know for sure, but it seemed that Potsdam had run the girl off for good, as he didn't see her in any of his blue magic classes anymore. And he didn't see her in the quad either. Why would she insist on his help only to waste his time? How like a wild seed to... Suddenly, his eyes caught sight of a girl with bright blue hair that seemed to glow in the sunlight, waving and smiling at the people who passed by. She was handing out little miniature lampshade badges and was talking to a girl wearing a lampshade over her head. Although he could not see her face, she stood with her arms crossed over her chest and her hip jutted out to one side. As the girl removed the lampshade to say something to the blue-haired girl, he could see that it was Miss Danson, Miss Brown's roommate. So that meant that this blue-haired girl was Miss Brown? He stood there and watched her for a few moments. She seemed like an entirely different girl. She was no longer the blonde shadow who had bumped into him on the quad on her very first day, walking with her eyes trained towards the ground at her feet. This girl seemed buoyant, assertive, and confident. He could scarcely bring himself to believe that they were the same person. Did she really want to win this campaign that badly? Well, hello there. He physically rolls his eyes as Professor Potsdam steps up behind him. How are you doing, Hieronymous? It's such a lovely morning, don't you think? He snorts dismissively out his nose. I see that there are many promising candidates this year. A little birdie told me that you are helping Miss Brown with her campaign. He just shakes his head. I met with her to secure the requisitions. Nothing further. As you know, since you are overseeing the Treasury position, it wouldn't be permissible for Tori to continue her campaign if you gave her any sort of counsel. There's laughter in her voice, as if she's simply teasing him, but he couldn't help but take notice that this was the second time Potsdam had sought to undermine Tori. He knew she didn't like wild seeds, but was she really going out of her way to undermine someone with so much potential simply because she was a wild seed? What are you going on about? Did you have a vendetta against the girl? I procured the information required. I did not provide her with any sort of counsel, nor have I shown her any degree of favoritism. He can't help but crack a grin. Although I do believe your appearance would greatly benefit if you decided to wear a lampshade over your head for the rest of the week. Perhaps as a hat, she replies brightly, and Hieronymous just rolls his eyes. She does look quite fetching with that blue hair, doesn't she? He shifts uncomfortably and says nothing. Commenting on the attractiveness of underage girls, or lack thereof, was as inappropriate as it was tasteless. I just can't help but wonder, Potsdam continues suddenly. Blue hair, blue magic? Perhaps she did it to try to attract your attention? You certainly seem to have attracted hers. He blushes suddenly at the insinuation. Is there a point to this conversation? No point, Potsdam replies cheerily. I just saw you over here, watching her. That's all. You know we can't show favoritism to any students, but if you would like to don a lampshade for the day, I think we can say it is all just in the spirit of the festivities. I have a class starting soon. Ordinarily, he didn't feel a need to waste his mana, but the quad was crowded and he needed to get away from Potsdam. Immediately, before she could insult his honor any further. He closed his eyes, discerned the location of his classroom, and teleported away. Professor Potsdam smiled as she watched Tori Brown in the quad for a few moments. She didn't really think that Professor Grabiner had tried to assist Tori with her campaign, but he had always insisted that freshmen work through a senior representative so he didn't have to deal with their repetitive questions. It was why Miss Danson had gone to such great lengths to recruit her older brother. So why did he make an exception for young Tori? That was the question, and she was more than just a little curious to find out. When I get back from class the next day, I plop my books down on the desk, exhausted. Virginia enters the room only a minute later, rushing over to me as she grabs my arm. Is it true? Virginia demands excitedly. Is what true? I ask blankly. You, she shouts, and Professor Grabiner. I just shake my head in confusion. Huh? William said you ditched him because you wanted alone time with the professor and you were practically flirting with him. Virginia seems almost giddy. That's not what happened. Okay, maybe I'm exaggerating just a little bit. That's not the point. Tori, have you got a crush on Grabby? I shrug. I don't know. Maybe a little. So what? Does it matter? But he's horrible. He's grumpy. He picked on you on your very first day of school, Virginia reminds me. We didn't know each other yet. It's not like I'm in love with him or anything, but he's an older man, which means he's mature. And he's intelligent, and he's not bad looking. Ew. She's laughing, but I think my weirdness meter might have just ticked up a few notches. Well, have it your way. At least, after that conversation, she decides to leave me be. On a Wednesday morning, campaigning is in full swing. All the candidates, not just in my year, but the upperclassmen too, have taken up positions in the main quad, calling out to everyone who passes and handing them colorful bits of paper. It's loud and crowded and confusing. Some of the older candidates are spraying magic sparklers over their heads to try to draw more attention to themselves, which just makes it worse. Angela for president, a male voice shouts. Kirchen for secretary, a female voice yells. Vote for Jacob, a male voice adds. Vote for me, I shout, trying to make myself stand out over the chorus of other voices. I'm doing my best to make myself heard, but even when I strain my throat, the crowd is mostly drowning me out. How can I get the crowd to notice me? Free hugs, I shout. Free hugs. Ooh, what? Luke asks as he passes by, and I glomp onto him for a quick hug. Vote for me. Okay, Luke says as he walks away, blushing slightly. Oh, did I hear someone say free hugs? Pastel asks. I detach from Luke and extend my arms towards her, then freeze as I spot her wings. I'm not sure how to hug her without hurting them. She doesn't seem to have any such fears, wrapping herself around me so that my cheek ends up against her shoulder and my chin practically resting on her bosom. Tentatively, I put my arms around her waist. It's just a hug. And then I feel her hips move. Vote for me? Perhaps, she replies. Over her shoulder, I can see others queuing up for free hugs. The things we do for politics. Knowing that students are going to pay attention to how I behave in class, I do well in all of my lessons, although I don't learn any new spells. After activities on Friday, each class has a scheduled time to come to the gym where the officer candidates make their final speeches before elections. Since we can't vote in the senior election, there's no reason for us to have to listen to their speeches or vice versa. The freshman slot is the last one of the day. I sneak in early to watch the end of the sophomore campaigns, hoping for some inspiration. I have a slightly better idea of what kinds of things to say, but they all have pros and cons. Finally, it's time for the freshman assembly. First up are the candidates for freshman class president. Minnie Cochran climbs onto stage looking bright-eyed and enthusiastic and says a bunch of stuff about offering a helping hand to other students. Everyone applauds. Then Suki Sato wanders up and starts talking about how she found a caterpillar once that turned into a lizard instead of a moth, or something like that. It's a little hard to follow. Oh, and apparently the spirits told her to run for president. Or some spirits. She's not sure which ones. Everyone applauds, but not as loudly. After that come the presentations for treasurer. Jacob Blazing, the Blazing Fire, struts up and gives a very brief speech about how money is obviously in very safe hands with him, and he knows how to spend it too. Everyone claps, and some guy even hoots in approval. Then it's my turn. Hi, my name is Tori Brown, and I'm running for class treasurer. In managing money, I will increase accountability through careful record keeping so that everyone can see exactly where the funds come from and how they are used. It will be my job to manage class fundraising events. I will create new events so that we can reach out to new populations and be more successful than ever. The most important thing that I bring to the table as treasurer is my math skills, because I can count pretty well. Thank you for listening, and please vote for me, Lady Lampshade Head. Everyone applauds. At last, it's time for the actual voting. Everyone lines up single file in the hallway leading to one of the classrooms. One at a time, we go inside to cast our votes. Each student is given a pencil and 2 pieces of paper containing the list of names for each office. You circle the name you want to vote for, then drop the paper into a box. For president, I vote for Minnie, and for treasurer, I vote for myself. Right, that's that. After all the votes are counted, we head back into the gym to hear the results. The position of freshman class treasurer will be held by Tori Brown. It takes me a moment before I realize she said my name. I won! And I'm proud to announce that this year's freshman class president will be Minnie Cochran. I'd like to thank you all for your hard work this week. You students are what make Iris Academy truly great. The teachers will be seeking out the newly elected officers later today to discuss their positions. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend. After the assembly, I meet with Professor Grabiner. So, he says, unable to even fake enthusiasm, you were successful. Yes, sir, I reply, smiling happily to myself. Very well, take these keys. He hands me a small loop of chain about the size of a bracelet with 3 bronze keys hanging from it. And report here at 5 a.m. tomorrow morning to begin your duties. 5. You were aware of what your duties would involve, weren't you? He's smirking slightly, as if he's enjoying taunting me. After all, you were given all the information ahead of time. I just nod. Right. Maybe I should have spent less time campaigning and more time reading the information booklet. I wanted to win, but I hadn't realized that I had to wake up at 5 in the morning every Saturday for the rest of the year. Ugh. And report here at 5 a.m. tomorrow morning to begin your duties. 5. You were aware of what your duties would involve, weren't you? After all, you were given all the information ahead of time. Tori just nods. Right. As she heads off, Professor Grabiner can't help but smirk to himself. He had a feeling that Tori hadn't actually read the booklet. The start times of the students were staggered, of course, so not everyone would be in the mailroom all at once, and it was true that freshmen had the earliest shift, but she was not required to start her duties until 8 a.m. at the earliest. Perhaps if she had actually read the book, she would have known better. As for now, it seemed that she would be waking up every Saturday morning far earlier than she needed to. Perhaps it was unfair to punish her for the cost of her own ignorance, but she had been given the information ahead of time and had chosen not to benefit from it. Hopefully, if she ever did find out the truth, it would help her realize that ignorance could be a punishment in itself.